On this week's show, a memorable Sun Belt baseball tournament in Statesboro sees the host team Georgia Southern advance to an exciting championship game. We'll have highlights and analysis as we welcome you inside the Eagles' Nest. Welcome inside the Eagles' Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And Mike, I know it could be cliche. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. The Eagles in the Sun Belt tournament, which they host, and the rain moved everything back, and then it was single elimination. And then Georgia Southern ends up with quite a few impressive comebacks. They even come back in the championship game. It looks like it's theirs, and then boom, boom, 2 home runs. The season comes to a close, but it wasn't without some excitement. I think the fans in Statesboro got their money's worth, even though it was a rain-shortened money's worth as far as the days go.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a 6-day tournament starting on Tuesday with the play-ins, going into the championship game Sunday, and maybe they didn't play all those games. They didn't play all those days, certainly. But I think all the excitement you would have gotten over the course of 6 days crammed into just the 4. And starting on the first night for the Eagles on Friday night, it was almost a quick tournament down to their last couple of outs against some of the best pitchers in the Sun Belt. Gunnar Leger, pitcher of the year. Louisiana's 2 great relief pitchers coming in, looking like they were going to make quick work of the Eagles. A 5-1 lead in the 9th, but the Eagles rally for a run, then get a grand slam from Logan Baldwin. Almost do it again in the championship game against South Alabama. Again trailing in the 9th, again getting a home run. This time, the senior Ryan Cleveland, his final hit as an Eagle, but just couldn't quite hold on. A couple of home runs for South Alabama, and then they win it in extras. A tough way to bow out of 2017.
Hey, they followed just shy of the 40-win plateau. You never know if they would have been able to beat Georgia a couple of games, beat Tech a couple of games, maybe even swept a series of Georgia State. You might have been able to squeeze your way in there, but nonetheless, an exciting tournament. You saw it all. We knew the Eagles had some pitching depth. They had to use quite a few pitchers in the tournament. And then you had a guy like Ryan Cleveland, who capped off his career at Georgia Southern in pretty impressive fashion.
Yeah, and in the press conference after the championship game, you heard head coach Rodney Hennon really broken up about the loss. Definitely bummed out for his seniors who made a lot of the plays to get him as far as they did. This is the 2nd straight time the Eagles have lost on Championship Sunday, playing for the Sun Belt. But you could really tell, he thought that he had the pitching to win a tournament, a regional, a super regional. The Eagles, they had by far the deepest, the best pitching in the tournament, save for a couple of quick starting outings in the first 2 games. But the bullpen did what it had done all year. The bats came alive just in time, and really I'd have liked to have seen what Georgia Southern could have done if they had been put in that regional field.
All right, for those of you who weren't able to get out there and see it, we got some highlights for you and some post-game interviews. You mentioned about Ryan Cleveland with Rodney Hennon's in regards to the seniors and particularly him. We also have some from Rodney Hennon.
just, an unbelievable college baseball game today. So proud of our kids. They just kept fighting as they've done all year long. Just unfortunately, we came up on the short end. You know, just spoke to those guys. That's a tough conversation to have. Nothing I can say right now that makes anyone in our program feel any better. But you're not defined by wins and losses. And the character of the young men and every coach, manager, trainer, every person in our program, I'm so proud of. And I love them. I'll tell you, time flies by. But from day one, he's been the same guy. In the weight room, on the field, in the classroom. He's a Dean's List student, works his tail off every day, and stepped up when we needed it most today, there in the ninth. And, you think about the power, and then later in the game makes a play with the bases loaded and 2 outs and flips the ball to Pisano there. He did everything he could to do for our team today. And, he and those other seniors, I'm going to miss them. I love every one of them. You get close to these kids, and there's so many good things I could say about each of them. But I'm certainly proud of him.
Hey, Miss Thompson, everything's fine. It's going to be no problem. I'll have you done in a few minutes.
My name is Paisley Nordhoff, part owner of Complete Car Care, and I want you to come see me.
Well, Mike, unfortunately, on top of the Eagles not making it to the postseason, only one team made it from the Sun Belt. And I do believe it was me mid-year that said, this is not looking like, to me, a league that's going to get more than one team in. Then it kind of looked like maybe one of the Lafayette, Georgia Southern, Coastal, one of those teams might be able to break in. But, in the long run, only one team came out of there. Were you surprised at all?
Well, definitely a little surprised, and I think that some of it has to do with the amount of parity in the league. Both divisions of the Sun Belt were up for grabs. It seemed, Georgia Southern, a prime example. They win 8 of their 10 Sun Belt series throughout the season. However, they don't sweep any of them, so those losses mount up a little bit. But what really ended up getting a lot of the teams, and Georgia Southern in particular, is that RPI, and that seems to be the magic number that the regional committee builds those brackets with. And you look at who Georgia Southern played this year, and usually Georgia Tech strong, Georgia strong, Kennesaw State in a super regional just a few years ago. None of those teams had a great year this year, so even if you get back those 2 losses against Georgia, the 2 losses against Georgia Tech, it just didn't help the Eagles enough in the RPI, which is a shame because you look at some of the teams they played. Louisiana, they obviously think that they should be in. They're in there almost every year. Coastal Carolina, granted they weren't on the same level as last year's national championship team, but still a solid team. South Alabama, almost a 2 seed. Do you really want to say that there are 30 or 40 teams in between South Alabama and Georgia Southern from what you saw on Sunday? So, in my personal opinion, the Eagles should have at least had a little more consideration. Maybe a 4 seed. Who knows? It just comes down more and more each year to who you play and if those bigger Power 5 teams happen to have a good year or not.
I think if Coastal maybe would have made it to the championship game, there's a chance that they could have gotten in. But, didn't happen, and so Sunbelt got one team into the postseason. As for Georgia Southern, you mentioned the seniors, the effect on Rodney Hennon breaking down on the stand because he knew how strong this team was, and I think that was part of it. I think you mentioned it during our break. If they could have gotten to a regional, they had the pitching depth to maybe make a run and keep on advancing. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen. Instead, you've got to fill the shoes of, I believe, 12 seniors that are graduating, and most of those were guys that you counted on day in, day out.
There's definitely going to be a lot of spots up for grabs in the field, in the pitching rotation when you get to the spring of 2018. The silver lining, I guess you could say, is that for all that senior help they had, it was a lot of freshmen who were coming around. One of the reasons that Georgia Southern was able to have such a good season in the wins and loss column was better hitting than last year. A lot of strikeouts still for this team, but more timely hitting, a little bit more power, and a lot of that coming from three freshmen. The three top averages on the team, Mitchell Golden, Stephen Curry, Mason McWhirter, those are all guys that the team was hoping could fill in, maybe make some noise. By the end of the year, they were as important to the lineup as anybody else, any of the juniors and seniors. So hopefully they can stay strong, improve, and instead of being pieces in the 2017 team, be a core of the 2018 squad.
And also contributing greatly, especially mid-season on, with Seth Schumann, another freshman we know quite a bit about. We'll see how he does in the fall, because that'll be a good indicator. I mean, I guess you can keep playing two sports. We've seen it happen quite a bit. But as a pitcher, Seth Schumann really stepped up this year. Interesting to see what his future holds. All right, well, that'll wrap it up for now. For Mike Anthony, I'm Josh Aubrey. We thank you for joining us. We're going to take a couple weeks off, and we'll be back to update how things are going, particularly on the football front. Thanks for joining us, and hope to see you again soon.